Hi, I'm Rhett, and today I'll take you through how I created one of my everyday artworks, this atmospheric landscape. I'll walk you through and talk you through how I made it. What you'll need is Cinema 4D, Octane Render, and Photoshop. So let's start by adding a plane. Let's bump this plane up to 4000 by 4000, bring the segments down to 1, then we've got our ground plane. Let me drop in a camera, turn the camera on, select the camera, I'll make it 80mm, and I'm going to zero out all these values, put the camera up to, let's say, 235, and bring it back to minus 3100, and let me bring up my Octane window so we can see what that all looks like. So I can see my ground plane, so sexy. Here's the sun. Let me select the render settings, select Octane. I'm deselecting save for now. I want to make it square. 1200 by 1200 should do, and select my Octane settings, change the path tracing, take the max samples down to 1000, the diffuse and specular depth down to 8, and the GI clamp down to 8. That'll save me some time. There we go. Let's bring this sun around to the right hand side. So there's my sun. Bring it round so it's coming through the right hand side, and I want to point it down a bit so it's maybe minus 20. There we go. So the central item in my scene is going to be, of course, a sphere. And let's change this sphere, turn off render perfect. So I'm going to have a sphere, and in the middle is going to be like a glowing, it's going to be like a glowing orb. So I want the central light, that's a sphere, and then a sphere on the outside which is bigger, that is sort of like a frosted glass. So let's make this the central one. Let's go for 25 centimeters. I'll just take the segments to 48. Let's add another sphere. Let's make this a bit bigger. 160. Turn off render perfect. Let's bump this right up to 80. Select both spheres. Hold down Shift. Option G to group those, and I'll rename that orb. Cool. Now let me just bring that up. Let me select this to bring all my windows up, and I'll keep this like center. Maybe somewhere there, or maybe I'll know a bit better when I get everything else in the scene, but somewhere like that, fairly central. Now what I might do is get my man in there. Now I'll show you where if you go to exo.io-air.de, you'll find their 3D scan people. And I think you just put in some of your details, email, and they'll let you have these 3D scans, is what I use. So let me open up that file, 3D assets, people, open up the OBJ. Bring my Octane window to the side a bit. So here's all the guys. I like to use this guy here. His name is Philip. Hi Philip. I'm going to copy and paste you into my scene. I cannot see you, so I'm going to deselect this camera first. Whoops. Deselect this camera, press S to find you. There you are. You are huge. I just want everything to fit into my sort of camera frame and what I've set up, so I am going to make you really small, probably around 1/10 of the size. Select the axis here, and that way I can change. Whoops. Let me deselect the camera, select Philip, and then I'll move the point of axis around about the middle, deselect that, move you into position. Okay, now I can select that and turn the camera back on. You're obviously way too huge, so I'm going to scale you right down. And I just want him to be a lonely individual staring at something. And bring you further back. Man and sphere. Just make you really sad and small. Sweet. Now let's get some cavernous, mountainous walls happening. So let's start with the landscape. Select object, landscape. Now I want it fairly big. I want it quite ominous. So let's go large. Let's go 2500 by 2500. And let's make the height of this about, let's say 400. Okay, and now I want these as walls on the side, so I'm going to change the orientation to X. I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees, put it right back. So you can see there I've got a mountainous wall happening. Now, what I like to do to give me some options of rotations and looks of a wall and landscape is I will wrap this landscape around a spline. So let me just create a spline with the pen tool in the overhead. I'm not going to be too pedantic, I just want to create, press space to end that, create like an irregular type of shape. That'll do. I want to then select spline wrap, drop that under the landscape, tell it to use the spline that we just made, and you can see how it's wrapped itself around that spline. So if I select the spline, the landscape will move along the axis, trying to copy that spline. So let me select all of that, Alt G, drop it into a group, call that wall, and that might be my first wall. And the beauty of this is I can deselect border at sea level, or I can change the dimensions, or I can change the seed, and each time it'll give me a different, totally different feel or look to that wall. So let me just go with that. Let me duplicate this a couple of times, Control C, V, V. Select that first wall, select the object and move that around. Rotate that to be over there. And maybe I rotate it again this way. And I try and get it a bit more vertical and get this sort of lip at the bottom. Looking good. Maybe I rotate it that way so it's turned in a bit. Leave a gap for the sunlight to come through. It could look nice. And take my other wall and do something similar. Rotate that. And rotate the other way. Whoops. Rotate the other way, maybe 90 degrees. Turn it in slightly. Press E to move it. And rotate it this way. And I'll take all of them and I'll move them, not all of them, maybe move the back one up so I can see the sky still. Okay, and maybe I'll rotate the back one. Give a bit of texture there, and this right wall, not too happy with that little bit of sun hitting that, so maybe I'll try and position that a bit differently so it's a bit more organic. And you can always come in and just select the landscape and change the seed value, and it'll give you a totally different look each time. Maybe I'll just go back to something like that. Oops, I want to select the whole group. If I'm going to rotate that, drop it down, and maybe I can bring it out of that sunlight a bit. So if you want to move it in the world plane, you just select that one up there, and then it allows you to do that. So it's just, I don't want to faff around too much. I think we get the idea. That's looking like a wall. So we've got some 3 walls. We can adjust that a bit later, but what I'm going to do is drop some Octane Displacement on that. Yeah, let's do that. It's actually, we've got Philip here. He's got a default white texture. Let's delete that. Let's give him his map he's meant to have. So I just Octane Diffuse, click Node Editor, drag in image texture, connect that to the diffuse image texture, open up a file, my people, and go to his map. He is this one that I know, his name is Philip. I don't want to copy that. And then I just drag that map onto him. So now he's textured. So let's do something similar to these walls. Octane Diffuse Texture, and of course you can go to the materials and they are all here, Octane Diffuse, Glossy. I've just created buttons at the top. Double click the diffuse, come into my node editor, I want to run this displacement off an image texture, so I'll need that. And I will get my displacement, connect that to the displacement node, make it kind of big, say 50 centimeter displacement, connect my input, and some nice free textures I found. Let me show you where I found them. Is UA High-Rise. So it's uahighrise.org. If you go to this anaglyphs section here, it gives you all these beautiful maps, and you can click through onto any of them. Say left observation, and we want, say, this JPEG black and white non-map, don't want anything projected on top of it, and it gives us these beautiful grayscale images that we can use to run a displacement. So I've got a few of these in my collected assets. So let me go to displacement, UA High-Rise. Let's grab this one. I'll try that one to begin with. Let me drop it on top of the back wall. You see how that's affected it. It's pretty low resolution because I haven't upped the detail yet. And look at that. Nice crazy displacement on that, making it look a lot more rockier. So let's drop that onto each of them. So we've got some nice rocky displaced walls happening now. And once again, I could go into each of those, just change the random seed, and it'll give me a different look to the walls altogether. But let's just say I'm happy with that at the moment. Maybe I want to give it an icy look, but maybe a bit of a rocky, icy look. So let's change it to a, a light brownish. Maybe not so. Oh, I don't hate pink. That'll do for now. I know I change the colors later, so I'll just stick with that. Nice looking wall. And let's give the floor a similar style, but a bit glossier this time. So image texture, displacement, connect the displacement, connect the image texture if you want to catch up, Octane. Thank you. And that's a lot less displacement, maybe about 3. Let's not forget to bump this right up this time. And I might just grab the same image texture as I did. See how that looks. And let's drop that on the ground plane. Sweet. Save that in case of a crash. Okay, let's texture this orb now. So we got the smaller sphere. I just want to diffuse Octane material. I deselect the diffuse because I'm going to go into the node editor, and black body emission, connect that to the emission, select that, click that up here to give it a bit more of a natural fall off. I do want it to have surface brightness, and that will be my light in the middle. Let me drag that to the sphere. Let me turn off this outer sphere just to ensure, there it is, there's the light there. And my outer sphere, I want like a textured frosted glass type of thing that's going to reflect all that light around. So let's create a glossy a specular. Sorry. Go into my node editor again. And this time I'm going to use the image texture to run the roughness. Open up a file. You can choose any file you've got. I've got a collection of textures. This one, I'm going to try this one here. You can find lots online, but I've created this one through previous painting and marbling painting experiments. So I haven't used this one before on an orb. I'm going to see how it goes. So that's connected. I'm just waiting for the thumbnail, but that should do. I can see it's like a frosted look. Now we just drag that onto the sphere. Sweet. It takes a lot longer to get that render feedback, but I can see there's some roughness changing across the sphere. And if I want to adjust that a bit more, I can drop a color correction node in between and up the brightness or the gamma, or play around inverting it too much, but let's change my values way too much. Maybe 0.96 for that gamma. That'll do for now. Okay, it's all happening, and my favorite part is, like, we could go for a clear, realistic type of crisp look like this and adjust the textures to be a bit more realistic. Actually, let me change that ground texture to be not a default diffuse white, a bit browner again, maybe a bit more orange. But I love adding fog. It kills the render times, and you know, and my memory often crashes. But I really love thick atmospheric fog look, and it does lovely things to the light. So this is one look, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause that render so it doesn't kill my machine. I'm going to select Objects, Octane Fog Volume. I'm going to do all my fog settings without it trying to update and render, and then I'll just turn it on when I'm ready. So let's go. So we've got our volume. Let's go generate fog. Sometimes I just click random cloud, but what I'll do is I'll go into the noise. I'll just make it a default noise. Where are you? Noise. And then bump the scale right up to something really high. We'll try that. Might not be enough. And then let's make the size of this voxel, the voxel size, much larger. So my grid of voxels is renders a lot easier, like way up, like 24. And let's increase the size. So we've got this little white box here, which is currently our volume fog. I want this to cover my entire scene pretty much. So let's make it 3000 wide. 1800 high. Drag it up. It covers most things, especially it's going to be whatever's in the camera. It looks okay. And the depth, let's make that similar to first one, maybe 4,000. Yeah, that covers everything. Beautiful. And one thing I noticed here, you can see the plane of the camera. So if I select my camera, it ends there. And really, I want my focus plane of the camera on the central object, which is a sphere. And I can do that. I'm going to turn off my fog. I can do that by turning back on my Octane render. Select F, I'm guessing that's focal length. Select my object, and you can see it's jumped right to there. So it's always going to focus right on that plane there. So that way, if I change the aperture or anything else, it's going to adjust it from there. So that's good. So back into my volume, change the size. So what I want from, click the medium tab, volume medium. I want a really low density, just creating like an atmospheric fog everywhere. 100% density is way too high for me. I'm going to bring it right down, just from experience, 0.08. I might make that up and down, and the step level to 2. The lower I put these, like the step length, the higher the quality of the fog will look, and also the lower the size of the voxels, the higher the quality of the render will look as well. But it also increases render times hugely and sometimes crashes my machine, so I'm not doing that. So let's change this absorption color to white. I'm going to give it a little bit of a tint, just a slight tint, similar to our scene. I'm going to make this fully white, the scatter, and the scattering phase to, let's go 0.8. The scattering phase, you'll see it has an effect on the light. When it hits the fog, it'll be a lot more lighter towards the light area and fade off to darker in the darker areas, where if you put it to 0, it'll be, I guess, more natural and consistent. But I want to give a bit more of a light haze and have an effect. So I think that's my settings for the fog. And let me just resend this scene to Octane, because I want to see what I have now done with my fog by turning it on and saying, bam, atmosphere. Great. So maybe I don't want the pink atmosphere because I've got the pinkish rocks already. And depending on how, I might even take this density to 0.1, even a bit thicker. So we lose definition of the displacement and the crevices of the rocks, but you get this realistic thickness to the scene, which I really like. Looking good. So sometimes I don't mind this this light area at the front here. I think maybe I might want to soften that off, give it a bit more of a rough edge. So I'm just going to grab my wall again, copy and paste it, rotate it, getting a bit crazy, but I'm just using this to position out here. To soften off I'm just, oops, obviously I don't know how this light's bouncing off, and I'm just doing it by eye, and I don't want it in the scene. There we go. Just a bit of a jagged fall off is all I was looking for. And you can see the response time is really slow now, but that's fine. So I want to give a bit more scale. So I'm selecting my camera, go to the coordinates, I'll pitch it up, maybe about 4 degrees. Yeah, so we're looking more at we've got the sense of scale from the rocks behind. I should have probably done that before I tried to touch up my scene with the light and that, but now I can just adjust that wall again. Maybe I didn't even need it now that I changed the camera angle. And it can be some trial and error, but maybe I don't even worry about it. I'll just get rid of that and turn it off. I'm just turning it off by holding down Option and double clicking the render and preview buttons there, and that turns them both off at the same time. Let's select this wall on the right hand side. Let's go to landscape and maybe just up. Let's up the wrong one, of course. Yep, change that back to 2500, and then I'll move it so there's still some sun coming through. Let me select the whole object rather than what I did there. I like that sun coming through the back there. Let me get a bit more of it. That's nice. I'm just looking at my forms. I got this, this central circle here, hovering off the ground plane, and I've got this light happening here. I don't mind this light coming down there. Maybe I want a little bit more or less of it. Maybe a bit more of it. So I select my right one. Of course, I could change the angle of my sun too. Not bad, but I might bring it back to and this is all just lighting details. A really dark scene might be really nice too. Sweet. I'm just turning that wall on and off to see what I've got there. once again, I could come, let me select it, I could come down to press landscape and to the seed again, and I just alter the seed if I wanted a different look. Change the seed, and it gives me a whole different wall. Which I usually do for about half an hour. Looking good. Okay. Let me render this. Actually, let me show you one more thing. Post, enable some bloom. Let's go to maybe 20. It's too crazy. Just 21. I just want a subtle bloom. And then another nice thing is this response. It gives film camera color lookup, so you can just select any of these and it'll give you a different color gradient look. It's like a lookup table, but it replicates different film cameras. So you can just get all different looks once you've got your standard setup from that. That's one that I like to use often. Gives a sort of neutral look better. Let's go for why not? Let's go for this one today. And obviously I can't stop playing with the seed of this wall. I'll keep doing that. And there you have it. That's a basic rundown on getting some mountainous walls. I always do some post in Photoshop. I will just quickly run through that. That might be another video later on. But I'll render this out and then we are done.